Chapter 4 The Birdman. Daniel was waiting outside my front gate early the next morning. He too had scarcely slept for the worrying about the Birdman and Prince. "I just hope he reached Samson and stayed the night there, that's all," he said. "He wouldn't have had time to get there and back. I know he wouldn't. Perhaps it's all right, though. After all, he must know that stretch of water better than anyone. Come on, Gracie, let's hurry." And we ran all the way up over Samson Hill, and only stopped for breath when we could see Rushy Bay below us. By now the force of the storm was spent, and the wind had died, but the sea was still seething and angry. The waves rolled into the bay from Samson, gathering and rearing as they neared the shore, before they curled over the hurl themselves into the hissing sand. The beach was empty. There was no prince waiting for us, and we could find no message in the sand. We could see the storm had thrown up a line of debris high under the dunes and must certainly have washed away any message the birdman might have left behind for us. Nonetheless, we had to be sure, so we searched the thin strip of dry, clear sand under the dunes, just in case. That was how we came across the oar, half hidden under a tangle of seaweed. Daniel helped me to pull it clear, and we picked it up and carried it onto the clean sand. "Could be anyone's, couldn't it?" I said, but Daniel said nothing. We scoured the beach together, picking over the flotsam, hoping against hope that we would not come across what we were now both expecting to find, the shattered and torn timbers of the birdman's boat. We found wood enough and plenty, but it was white, wave-washed and smooth. There was no trace either of his boat nor of the other oar. I was relieved and heartened enough by this time to imagine that all was well, that we had indeed found an oar from someone else's boat, but Daniel insisted that we should go over to Great Parr, the beach on the other side of Heathy Hill, where we knew the birdman always kept his boat. "If they are back safely, like you say they are," said Daniel, "then the boat will be there, won't it? And we won't have to worry any more, will we?" We left the oar lying on the top of the dunes and made our way to the reeds towards the Great Parr. We walked on together in silence, and all the while I dreaded we might find nothing there, that my worst fears would be realised. As we came to the top of each dune, more and more of the beach came into view, and still there was no boat to be seen. We were passing just below the birdman's cottage when Daniel stopped suddenly and caught my arm. "There's no smoke, Gracie," he said, his voice hushed to a whisper. "Look, can't you see? There's no smoke coming out of the chimneys. There's always been smoke before. I know there has. And there's no gulls either. There's no gulls on the roof." I looked up at the cottage, which was almost camouflaged against the background of heather on Heathy Hill, and I could see Daniel was right, that the place was indeed deserted. The front door banged in the wind, and no one came to shut it. The corner of the thatch had been ripped away by the storm and lay strewn around the potato field below the house. There was no sign of life on the hill except for the birdman's 2 goats that clambered amongst the rocks at the top of the droopy-nosed point. Then a solitary gull flew over and hung on the wind above the cottage. It circled once above us and then flew out over the sea towards Samson. I knew it at that moment what was going through Daniel's mind. I knew I had to forestall him. "There's no one in there, Daniel," I said quickly. "You can tell there's no one there. Let's go on and see if the boat's in Great Parr. No need to go any closer, is there?" "Well, I'm not going up there, that's for sure." And suddenly all those terrible fears of the birdman welled up inside me once again. "You can stay here if you like," Daniel said, ignoring my protests, "but I'm going to find out if he's in there. What's the matter with you, Gracie? What's he ever done to hurt you? I mean, we know he's not mad now, don't we? Come on, Gracie, it'll be all right." I find myself following him reluctantly up the hill, through head-high bracken and heather, into the biggest and best-kept vegetable garden I had ever seen, and past a pair of white beehives that that stood like sentries on either side of the track. Several brown hens ran squawking towards us out of the heather and then followed us up the path at a discreet distance. We slowed, almost tiptoeing, as we reached the front door that blew shut in our faces just as we reached it. Daniel knocked once. No one came. He knocked again. "See," I said, pulling him back. "He's not there. I told you, didn't I? I told you he wouldn't be." But Daniel paid me no attention. He lifted the latch on the door, took my hand firmly in his, and we stepped together into the darkness of the cottage. It was one long room with an unmade bed at one end by the fire.